Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. Ready to kick off another automation hour here with Zach today. So let's get started. So automation hour we have just about every other Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. We have a few upcoming ones in May and 3 in June. So lots of really awesome people with really awesome presentations. So really a lot of great presentations to look forward to here, but we do still need people for later in the year after June. So if you've got a cool process automation use case, submit your idea. We've got that on automationhour.com. You can also find all of that through the success community. So if you've got an idea and you want to present one week, please submit an idea. All right, so for logistics of this, all lines are going to be muted. So if you have any questions or any issues throughout the webinar, please use the chat function to ask questions, and we'll try to respond as quickly as we can. Some of them we'll probably wait till the end if they're a good question to kind of dive into a little bit more detail and ask Zach directly. If you have any questions after, if you're somebody who's watching this on YouTube right now, please find us in the success community and ask the question in the Automation Hour success community. And the recording will be posted after today's session. We'll have it on our website, which is below there in automationhour.com, as well as it'll be on YouTube and the success community. Big thank you to our sponsor, Concrete.io. Without them, we wouldn't be having this GoToWebinar. And here are the co-hosts. You got Rakesh, Jennifer, and myself. This is us at Dreamforce last year. And without further ado, I'm going to be passing it now over to Zach.
All right. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? All right. All right. Good deal. Good deal. Well, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me on Automation Hour. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Just making sure. I don't want anybody to be missing anything. So, I am Zac Otero. I'm a former machine operator in another life. I stumbled into Salesforce a few years ago and decided it was for me. So I pursued it pretty hardcore for a little while I was actually still operating a machine in a factory, and I was lucky enough through the Salesforce community and the user groups to find a job in my local market. And I've got certified a few times. I'm an admin, advanced admin, and an app builder. As I said, I've been a full-time admin for 2 years, completely self-taught, Trailhead to the max, lots of other great resources. There's tons and tons of blogs out there for content to help you along when you get stuck, things like Automation Hour, and just dig through those resources, trying to find what I need. I'm also the owner of the Ultimate Salesforce swag in the gold hoodie there. I was honored to be a recipient of the Trailblazer Award at Dreamforce last year. They were nice enough to blindside me with that. I got a very big surprise, called up on stage in the middle of the admin keynote. So that was a great experience, and very honored to be given that. One of my favorite quotes, I always like to plug in a quote where I can. Henry Rollins said, "I don't have talent, I have tenacity." So being self-taught, being resourceful is a big part of that. If you don't know the answer, just know where to go to find it. So you don't have to know everything. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump in. My use case we're talking about today is headless flow, and I'll go into the definition of that in a minute. But I'm going to walk through a little bit and explain my data structure, my requirements, my scenario, and what I had to build and what I was able to automate to meet those requirements. So my business, we have a very small call team that makes outgoing calls, and I created a custom object like any good admin would to track those calling campaigns. I titled them initiatives to try to cut down on the terminology overlap, especially in marketing. The word campaign gets thrown around a lot, and try to avoid any of that. I went with the term initiatives to try to differentiate a little bit. So after creating an object to house up my initiatives and all that information around them, I needed a way to see each of my callers' information within them. I wanted to see those individual slices. So similar to, as I understand what the Service Cloud has, but I only have the Sales Cloud, so I'm building this from the ground up, building it from scratch. So after that, I needed, like I said, a junction object that could represent my caller's information specific to each initiative. Needed to be the junction between a user and an initiative. I needed it to be uniquely identified, specific to each caller within each initiative. So a unique set every time with its own unique data values. And that's the point where I wanted to aggregate and display unique information to each of those callers, like the number of accounts that they were assigned, the number of calls they made, and their individual success rate within each initiative. If any of you have ever heard of Andy Fawcett's the declarative lookup rollup summary tool, that's what I'm using here. I don't use Rollup Helper. I use Andy Fawcett's tool because it's free. And a lot of that is how I was able to replicate that Service Cloud functionality in the Sales Cloud, just on a little bit smaller scale. So if you've never used it, I definitely recommend looking it up. It's really powerful stuff, and it's a lot of fun to play with. So you can get a lot of things done with it. So. I also needed them to be created automatically. I didn't want to add any steps for my users and interrupt their day-to-day. Everybody knows that they're important not to disrupt disrupt your users' natural flow unless you absolutely have to by adding more steps and one more thing to check. I wanted it to be fully automated, and I knew that Salesforce could handle that. So what I needed to build from the ground up was I needed the junction object, an assigned caller, which was the term I opted to go with a lookup to the user, a lookup to the initiative itself, and then a lookup from the task, which is the calls that are being made, that's how we're logging them, and a lookup from the account. So I needed to spider web that data together and represent it in the center there as an assigned caller. I also needed the unique identifier. So I took the user ID, I took the initiative ID, I concatenated them together, making that long string of information, but uniquely represents this person's place in this initiative, their little niche there. So hooray for cross-object formulas. If you've never used one, I suggest it. That's how this whole thing was hinged together on a cross-object formula, that concatenated ID. My requirements were to start the process when the initiative itself or the caller changes, so both fields on the account. When that happens, I need to search for the records by unique identifier. If a match is found, associate it. If no match is found, create the assigned caller record and then associate it. Again, need to be fully automated, no added steps. The obstacles that came up, Process Builder could start the process based on changes to the field values, like we all know. Process Builder can do that. Process Builder could not search for the records, which I wanted to do to prevent duplicates, and then create unrelated records. We can always create, as our action steps in Process Builder, we can create records, but they're always related. I needed to create an unrelated record and then populate the lookup field on it. And that kind of took me out of the realm of Process Builder. So I need a system that can do all of that and allow information to be stored and referenced throughout a process as we step through. So the solution became Flow. And this was my first foray into Flow. I had no real previous experience. I'd pulled it up a couple times and looked at it and got kind of scared and wondered, oh, what is that thing? Let's not mess with it. Until I actually ran into a use case, I needed to do something. So it was so it's time to just figure it out, jump in and start playing with it. So Headless Flow. Flow was designed by Salesforce to be a series of screens that you step through in the user interface and collect information from your users, similar to a call script in a call center. You can look up your account ID or whatever the case is, and then you build your flow to react to the information that you feed it. Well, headless flow, as it's been dubbed, is getting the processing power of the flow engine without the interaction from the user, without that user interface element. So we're not actually collecting information from the user by then typing it in, we're collecting it from a process. And we're just adding that as an extension of processing power, kind of bolting it on to Process Builder and not depending on the input from the user. Process Builder on steroids. So it can do a lot of things that Process Builder can't do. Flow allows you to do just what I needed, which was to search for records, store variables, which can be record IDs, other values, whole records, and whole collections of records. If you're not familiar with the concept of variables, if the analogy that I like to take is if all of your records were paper documents on a tabletop, and you needed to store about a variable somewhere, that would be the little piece of information that you jot down on a sticky note, and you stick it over on the edge of your tabletop, and you're going to need that for later. You just want to write that down so you forget, it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. You need that for a reference point over on the corner of the table as you work your way through your stack of papers. It's about the best way I come up with to visualize and think about a variable. So, but that can be any number of things. That can be text, number, date, currency. It can be true, false, Boolean values. It can be, like I said, the whole record itself. It can be whole sets of records. The variables are really powerful because they can do a lot of different things. Flow gives us decision trees, even multiple decision trees. So you can make you can kind of go down the branches of your decision tree in your flow chart. That's where it gets its name because it mirrors like a traditional flow chart. And you can build up those decision trees to take action on your data based on what it is. Flow can also delete records where Process Builder cannot. In the event that you need that to happen, Flow can facilitate that. Even more, can walk users through a process via a series of screens, as I just explained. Collect data from the user, loop through collections of records, making updates. So in that tabletop analogy, say if it wasn't paper documents, maybe it was a deck of cards. So we want to separate all of our records, which are those playing cards, out into different piles. We have one pile that's all the face cards, one pile that's all the red odd-numbered cards, and then we have a couple of jokers in there. We need to stick them somewhere else too. We can loop through our stack of records and separate them as they need, and then once they're in separate stacks, we can take action on those collections, on those stacks of records as well. So if that kind of helps you visualize it. Can reference records after updates are made with Flow. So sometimes with Process Builder, I know a best practice is to have, I think Salesforce says that we should have all the processes in for an object on a single Process Builder process. Some may or may not do that. So if you have multiple, sometimes it's not really clear on the firing order and what order updates are made. If you bring your process into Flow, you can have a little bit more granular control over what stage in the process information is updated, and then you can take other actions after those initial updates have been made. So it gives you a little bit more clarity, plus a little bit more power to see where you're going when it might not be clear. So Flow can also do email alerts, quick actions, post to chatter, and it can execute Apex. If we have any coders out there that are listening right now, it can also execute Apex from Flow as well, which makes it really powerful. All of these things can be nested. So if you think about like your formulas or your processes, all these can be nested together and kind of build out what you need really specifically. So when you start to combine and compound the power of all these different actions together, that's where you really get the extended functionality and the power of Flow. So to the demo. I will switch over here. So this whole process starts in Process Builder, where we're pretty familiar. Most of the admins, I think, can kind of know their way around the Process Builder. If you're really old school and this is new to you, and you're more familiar with workflow, this might be new territory, but I think everybody knows where we're at here. So this is the process that I'm using to start this flow. So whenever changes are made to my account, whenever values are set, whatever your criteria are, you get to your action, you can fire a flow up here in the action name, and you find your flow, and then you can set the variables. So we're going to, Process Builder can really be the gateway that, like I said, that you could kind of think about that bolt-on horsepower analogy. You're going to be passing information into flow, and then flow is going to kind of take it from there. This is where that happens. So I need to collect 3 pieces of information in order to start this thing. So I'm going to pass in my concatenated ID, my initiative ID, and my user ID. Let's take a look at the actual flow now. We kind of know how we're starting it. We're just kind of, once we have our criteria set, or whatever those may or may not be for your use case, the action that you're taking is you're passing information into the flow engine and into that different arena where you can take all those extra actions. This is the flow that I built. Whoop. Yeah, let's get back up here. If you've never seen it, this is the flow canvas. This is all drag and drop over here on the left. Just a brief description. These are all the elements and resources that you can use to build with. I won't go into the full description here, but there's a lot of really great content online that walks through how to use each of these steps and all the different resources and what they do. To explain, to stay on topic and just explain what we're dealing with today, I started with, which is indicated by that little green arrow right here. This is where this process is going to start. I started with a record lookup. Let's open this up and take a look at it. They're called lookup assigned caller. So I'm going to look for, the first thing I'm going to do is my criteria that were in Process Builder is if the initiative or the caller changes, like I outlined earlier. If either of those things changes, then I need to fire this. So what I want to do, the action I want to take, is I want to look up and see if that junction object exists for this person or this initiative. So the concatenated ID that I'm getting in here from Process Builder right here, it's going to look up the assigned caller record that matches concatenated ID equals the variable right here. That's what the exclamation points and brackets means. Is you're looking at the variable that you passed in. And then you can select all kinds of different things in here in Flow. So we're going to find that junction object that meets that concatenated ID that may now be unique since one of those values changed, may or may not. So it's going to find that, and then it's going to assign the records fields to variables to reference them in your flow. Now, that doesn't make sense. It just says, okay, we're going to find this record. Now that we have it, what are we doing with it? We're going to take the ID field off of that assigned caller record. We're going to plug it into its own variable. So we're going to take that ID number, we're going to jot it down on its own Post-it note, stick it over here. We might need that later. So we're going to kind of collect information as we go through. And then, very important, assign null values to the variables if no records are found. So if there's no record that matches that ID, it's just going to assign a null value. So it's just going to put an empty space, empty string in that assigned caller ID variable that represents the existence of that junction object that I'm looking for. Next is the decision. It's going to say, okay, are we going to assign one or we're going to create one? We need to know. So this is the decision element. Over here on the left are the editable outcomes. You can kind of see what they are. The outcome, create new assigned caller, is based on if that assigned caller ID that I just created a minute ago, it's going to look up that record, see if it exists. If it does, it's going to plug in its ID number into that variable. If it doesn't exist, it's going to plug in that null value where we check that box. So what this is doing is evaluating that variable. It's going to look over that Post-it note and say, okay, did that process write anything down there, or did it just leave it blank? So in this arm of the decision tree, it says if this is null global constant true, then we're going to go down one arm of the decision tree. And then assign is just the opposite. If it is let's look at it, does not equal empty string, so it's probably change that. But just the opposite. So if the previous step populated that information into that variable, then it's going to say, okay, we're just going to take that and then do something with it in a different arm of the tree. If you step down from there, you can kind of see it puts the text on the arm, so you can kind of tell where you're at. If we're going to assign it, then a lovely typo I have here. Oh, it's nice. You get in too big of a hurry. So if we're on this arm of the tree and we're assigning it, that means that we found the record that we were looking for. It exists. We don't have to create it. Nothing else is happening. We're going to update a record. We're going to update an account where we can select in here. We can select any standard or custom object to update. Each one of these steps gives you really granular control over what you're doing. You're not limited to where in Process Builder you're limited to the object that you're on. You can start to take action on different objects in the database inside of Flow. So we're going to find the account, the concatenated ID, and we're going to update that assigned caller lookup field with the one that we found. So pretty basic. We're going to find the one that we need and plug in that lookup field where we need it. And then alternately, if one doesn't exist, then we're going to just add an extra step in there between these two. We're going to create the one that we need and then assign it. So same thing, we're going to create a record. What are we creating? We're creating an assigned caller junction object that I needed. We're going to plug in those values, and these are actually the two values that I took in over here at the Process Builder, which is the initiative and the user ID right here. So we need to know those two things, those are required fields on that object. So we're just going to create, bang, bang, those right there, and then we're going to take the variable from that record that we're creating, and we're going to plug in its ID into a variable too. So if we needed to take more action, we can, and we do. We need to take that ID for the record that we just created and plug it onto the source account that started our process. So mirroring the other node that I just opened here, we're going to find the account that matches the concatenated ID, and we're going to take the assigned caller and plug in that variable, the created assigned caller ID from the previous step, into that lookup field. So Flow gives you a lot, like I said, a lot of granular control over the steps in the process. And at first that could be really confusing if you're kind of out of your, if you feel kind of like it's a whirlwind, you don't know why it's asking these questions. It's asking you those questions because it's a lot more high-powered. With Process Builder being limited to the single object, it can kind of make assumptions about what you want to see. And in here, you have to really tell it at each step what you're doing in a higher level of detail. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this off, and I'll show you how it works. Because the logic behind this isn't really complicated. Again, we're going to look for the record. If one exists, we're going to want to fill it in that lookup field. If one doesn't exist, you want to create it and then fill in a lookup field. So it's a sentence or two of logic, but building it out on the in the automation can be a little bit more hairy. So let's take a look here. We've got a test account here in my org, and then a testing initiative that I have over here as well. So we have a couple of accounts plugged in here already, but we don't have any assigned callers yet. So what we're going to do is I'm going to plug this account, and I'm going to drop it into that testing initiative, and I'm going to assign it a caller. And what the flow is going to do is it should create that assigned caller junction object, and it should bring back its ID and plug it into this field right here. So let's do that here real fast. Do testing initiative. And the caller, I'm going to make, this comes off of a pick list. It's probably not best practice. I'm going to plan to change that to a lookup to the user. It's not there yet, but that's a thing on the to-do list for sure. So those are the only two pieces that we need. If we hit save, what this should happen is it should go create that assigned caller record, since one doesn't exist for it, that we confirmed over here. And then it should bring back the ID of the one it creates and plug it in right here and establish that relationship. Okay, so the formula on my account spit out that concatenated ID, and just that fast, it went through the whole process. Let's take a look. So there it is. This is the junction object itself. This is the accounts that are assigned. It looks like, since we looked up the ones that it looked up according to that unique ID, that concatenated ID, it actually found these and got them in there as well. So just that easy. Whenever these values change, then it updates the assigned caller that it's unique to. And if we refresh my testing initiative, my custom object here, then there's that unique record right there. So and now I can start to roll up all those numbers, my open leads, and all that information at that unique level in my database. So again, that's all based off of Andy Fawcett's roll-up tool, but that combined with Flow really gave me a lot of power to try to build this out and make it work the way that it does. So, in summary, I know that was pretty fast, but in summary, if you've exhausted Process Builder, Headless Flow can help provide a wider range of actions and more granular control over your process steps. Like I said, the Flow designer will ask you a lot of questions that you may not be familiar with from the Process Builder, but that's mainly because it is more powerful, and you really need to specify, pump the brakes and specify at each level what you're doing and which direction you're heading. So. That was the extent that I had. Sorry about that. Thank you for attending. If David or Rakesh, if you want to jump in, I can go for some questions if anybody has any questions.
At the moment, we don't have any questions, Jack.
And if anyone doesn't have a little bit back to there. If there's no questions related to, exactly what Zach just went over, if anyone has any other Flow Process Builder questions, they don't have to be specific to everything that we just saw. All right, we got a question. I'll let Zach answer first. What do you prefer, Process Builder or Flow?
Not to take the easy route, but I'd say it probably depends on the requirements. If it's something a little simpler that Process Builder can do, then I recommend just keeping it there. But if your requirement's a little more complex, then moving your process into Flow and using that bolt-on power can really help you achieve those more complex requirements. So I'd say it depends on the requirements.
I would agree. Yeah, I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all for Process Builder or Flow. It's definitely org specific and specific to the different objects in there and what you're trying to do on those objects. That's a good question. All right, we got another question. I remember there was an initiative to take on the basics of Flow and grow with them depending on the complexity. What is the decision, or is this something that is still on the pipeline? If you could maybe expand a little bit, I'm not sure I exactly understand what you're asking. If it's specific to like the automation hour, or if it's something around Salesforce's pipeline or release schedule. Not very clear which way you're asking that. And while we're waiting for that follow-up, we got another question. Can you provide any best practices on how to debug flow? For example, looking at logs in the dev console or displaying values on screens as the flow processes. Do you have anything, Zach, that you prefer to do when you're debugging?
No, I don't think I have a preferred. Sometimes it can be kind of complex if the error messages that you get back from if it fails to execute can be they've gotten a little bit better, but sometimes it can be hard. No, I don't really have a preferred method.
Yeah, I would say it kind of depends. I normally try to do the easiest route first, which is the email alerts. So when something does break, I try to solve it through the email alert, and if that isn't a quick fix and it's a little bit more complicated, I normally will then escalate it to the screens, and then dev console is normally like my last method of escalation. But that's just my personal preference. I feel like for most of them, you can pretty much solve the issue through the emails that are now being sent out. They're not as basic as they used to be.
Yeah, when were those changed? Wasn't that somewhat recently?
Within the past 3 releases, and it's been improving each release. They keep on adding to it, so it definitely has changed the ability for us to debug those quickly. All right, so we have another question of what are the differences between lookup and fast lookup data elements in a flow? Sometimes it's confusing between the two.
A record lookup will find you typically just one record, and then a fast lookup will find a group of records typically. Am I right on that, David? I might be off. Who knows? I don't know everything.
Yeah, no, you're right on there. So typically, fast lookup, you're wanting to return multiple records. I've heard some arguments around, using fast lookup instead of a regular lookup to try to bulkify your flow more. In terms of, that's kind of how Apex works. But if you're firing a flow through Process Builder, it doesn't matter if it's a fast lookup or a record lookup if you're only trying to find one record. So there's benefits to the fast lookup, I guess, if you want to use more of an S object instead of regular variables. I normally just find it a whole lot easier to use a regular lookup, and that's what I use almost every time, unless I'm going to actually return multiple records. Like, let's say I want to find all the opportunities associated to an account or all the contacts associated to an account. I would need to do that through a fast lookup because I would be pulling in multiple records. And then after that, you'd have to probably be looping through them to go through each contact or opportunity or whatever you've looked up through your fast lookup and then modify the data how you want it to be modified or send out alerts for each record or whatever you're trying to do there. So the fast lookups are really just when you're wanting multiple records, and they are a little bit harder to learn at first. So definitely start with the regular lookups, and once you normally master just the basic flows, then it's a little bit easier to jump into the fast lookups. And then we got another one. Are the 2 assignment nodes identical? Could the record create point to the existing assignment node?
No, they're not identical just because in my use case where that I demoed here, where one branch was looking at an existing record, one was looking at another record, the value that it would be updating that lookup field would be different. Say on the right-hand side, it would be the record ID for the record that had just created in the previous step, and then on the left-hand side, it would be the one that the query actually found.
Awesome. Let us know if that answers your question. And then we've got another question, the follow-up from before, and it's just about, you know, the, I guess, technical level of where the automation hour sessions are, and asking about a more beginner track. And at this point, we're not kind of lining up the sessions based off of the topics and skill level, because each of the different presenters are presenting on something that they want to present on. But we do have the mindset to make sure we have a lot more beginner sessions that we will be keeping in, and not, you know, have everything just be the coolest, craziest flow or process builder that you've ever seen, and do kind of more some intro to process builder and intro to flow, so that we can kind of make it for everybody. But we don't, at this time, we'll take that back and discuss it, but we don't have anything that is, you know, necessarily a track where we're slowly progressing week after week of learning process builder to flow. But thank you for the input there.
We will try to schedule as much as we can.
Any other questions? Those are all good questions so far. All right, we'll sit tight for just another minute, see if anyone has any other questions, and if that's all the questions, and no more come in the next few minutes, then we'll end the webinar. So.
Okay, so one question posted by Rita. Are the two assignment nodes identical? Could the record create point to the existing assignment node?
Zach, did you already? I think Zach might have already answered that one.
Yeah, that sounds really familiar.
I think that might have. I think we already got to that one. So. All right, well, if anyone does have any other questions, please post them to the Success community, Automation Hour, and we'll be happy to try to get to those questions on there. And we look forward to seeing everybody on our next presentation, and y'all have a great weekend. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.